Santa Montefiore, welcome to the Great Big Book Club. I can't tell you how excited I am to see you.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on it.
So you have a new book out called Here and Now. There it is.
I suppose it's in mirror. It's the opposite, isn't it? Because it's recorded. No, it isn't. Oh, good. Okay, here and now. There we are.
And it's top 10 already.
Yes, when it came out on Thursday, and it's number 4 on the hardback bestsellers list, which is so exciting.
And you've got another one out as well, a paperback, which is
yeah. I've got The Secret Hours, which is the paperback of the hardback that came out last year. Usually it comes out in April, but this year, because of Corona, it came out on the same day as this one, on the 9th of July. And that's number 5 on the paperback bestsellers list. So it looks very impressive to have them both next to each other in the Sunday Times, but usually they come out a few months apart.
I hope you framed that image.
I haven't actually. I've kept the culture section, but I think I really will frame it. Actually, it's such a good idea.
So exciting, so exciting. So this book, Here and Now, is really the story of Marigold and Dennis. It's a sort of love story, almost in reverse, in a sort of weird way. I mean, it's so beautifully written. It's ostensibly about what is known as the long goodbye, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. I love writing about old people. I find people who have been married for 60 years who still love each other like that. I find it, it's rare and it's beautiful and it's tender. And I wanted to write about dementia because I saw so many articles in the papers and in the press when I was thinking about what to write next about dementia. And it always features an old woman with grey hair, looking utterly miserable, usually in grainy black and white, head in her hands, looking desperate and miserable and hopeless. And I thought, where's the love? Where's the support? Where's the silver lining to the cloud? Because there has to be something. And then I went further onto Google and looked up interviews and things with people who have dementia. And I realized that there are a lot of people out there who live in the moment. And while there's a long period of time for many people who, before it gets too bad, which inevitably it does in the end, where they can enjoy the moment with the people they love and with those supporting them around them. They can enjoy their family, nature, just being. And there were so many uplifting interviews. And also there was a book that was published the year I was thinking of writing this, called Somebody I Used to Know by Wendy Mitchell. And it's an autobiography about her journey through Alzheimer's. And her message is really clear. I'm not suffering with dementia, I'm living with dementia, and I can cope, and I'm enjoying my life, and I'm enjoying the people I love, and with their support I can actually get the most out of my life. And she's she's crazily busy on Twitter and things, really sending out that message. Don't think it's all awful and negative, because it's not.
But it is, your book is beautifully paced, and it starts off with her 2 daughters both coming home. One of them is actually already at home, isn't she?
Yeah, that's right. So I've got Suze, who's at home and is a sort of influencer and doesn't really do much.
That made me laugh a lot. It's basically about, there's one line in it when it says, people just want to be me.
Yes, I'm so fabulous. I'm just posting my cup of tea in the morning, the earrings I'm putting on, and everyone wants to be me. And of course, as most of these influencers are, it's a huge sort of illusion, because in real life she's actually extremely bored and would love to be doing something much more interesting. So she's at home with her parents, who are in their 60s, their late 60s. And of course, Dennis is a carpenter and works from home in his shed, and Marigold runs the village shop. So she's the center of the community. And all the people from the village, who all have little feuds, petty feuds about the tree that's overshadowing somebody else's garden, or somebody's dog ate somebody's cat, or whatever, all these little feuds. So they all come into the village shop and tell Marigold about their woes and have a good bitch, etc. And so she's very much the center of the community. And then Daisy, her eldest daughter, breaks up with her long-standing Italian boyfriend and moves back to live with Marigold and Dennis. So suddenly most parents say goodbye to their children and off they fly the nest. But no, Marigold and Dennis have both girls living with them. And then Marigold starts to forget things. Little by little, she loses her memory. And it's really, yes, about how the family cope with that, because of course, Marigold's always been there for them and looking after them. And suddenly they're having to switch their roles and look after Marigold. And of course, we have to discuss Nan, who is probably one of my favorite characters.
And mine. She's just funny and rude and awful and like a proper cantankerous old person. But also the irony is that it's her daughter who is losing her memory. So it's almost like she can see, it's a critique about being in like the squeezed middle, isn't it?
Yes, no, exactly. And you expect, if you hadn't read the blurb and you knew it was about dementia, you'd expect it was Nan to lose her memory, not Marigold. And she finds it very hard to play the game, because what I learned when I was researching dementia is, as they lose their memories, they lose the early ones, the most recent memories first, and it sort of goes backwards. So they remember the past really well, and they're very likely to say, I'm seeing mum and dad today. Well, mum and dad died 30 years ago. But if you say, hold on, your parents died 30 years ago, that's a terrible trauma, because it's like they're hearing it for the first time. So you have to go along with it and say, how lovely, when are you seeing them? Because shortly they're going to forget they even had that conversation with you. So Nan can't play the game. She can't say to Marigold, oh yes, how lovely, like everyone else is trying to do. She'll go, that's not true. They're not coming, and finds it very hard to accept that her daughter is the one who's needing care when she's growing older and she has all her aches and pains, and she's the one who should be being looked after. But I love writing about cantankerous old people. I have in my family a cantankerous old person who, whatever I say, if I say, gosh, I'm going to repaint my drawing room, she'll go, now how's that going to look with your paintings? She'll never say, how wonderful, that's going to be marvelous, always looking for the negative. So I thought for Nan, I gave her that attribute, because there are a lot of people like that. I thought it'd be quite fun.
But there's a lot of comedy in the book as well. I mean, there's an underlying tragedy about, the idea of losing memory, and who are we without our memories? Do we become non-people if we can't remember our lives? And yet at the same time, you've got this very, very funny sort of witty village thing going on. It's like the juxtaposition of the two is very good, because it takes you up and down, and you laugh and then you cry.
Yes, I always have to have an underlayer of comedy, because when you're dealing, as you know, as a writer, and you're dealing with emotions that are heavy emotions of loss and tragedy, I want to uplift my reader too. I very much write the sort of thing that I like to read. So yes, I like to cry in a book, but I also want to laugh in a book. So the lesser characters always give me the opportunity to put a few threads of comedy in there. And certainly the village characters, the Commodore with his moles. Actually, a friend of mine, he read it. He's the one who helped me research dementia, because his mother's in a nursing home, and he very sweetly invited me to come and meet her. I mean, I knew her when I was a child, actually. Funnily enough, she remembered me because she knew me when I was a child, but she couldn't remember my parents, who she's seen recently. So it was quite interesting. But he knows a lot about moles, being somebody living on the land. And he said, Santi, you can't have, 50 moles invading this man's garden, because they're territorial. You'll probably only get 2 or 3. So that really ruined my plot. So I've had to use a bit of artistic license, and I don't have 50 anymore. I have something like, 15, but it's still too many moles for reality. But I needed, I wanted that comedy.
You also do sort of intergenerational women very well, because I mean, in Temptation of Gracie, say for example, you like the three generations of women together. I mean, is that one of the things that you really enjoy writing?
I think I enjoy writing, but it's also deliberate because I have such a wide span of readers. So I have my 90-year-olds who write to me. I have my 40-year-olds, and I have my 19-year-olds. So I know that when I read a book, I like to identify. Actually, I do love reading about, a man called Ove, who's a really old man. So I do like reading about old people. I don't have to identify. But I gave the proof copy to a friend of mine who's 25 to read, and she came back immediately and said, "Oh, I love Daisy." And I'm thinking, really? Because Marigold is the one I love the best. But then, of course, she's a young girl and she identifies with Daisy. So I think, I think I do that quite deliberately, because actually, if I had really gone with what I wanted to do, I probably wouldn't have had Daisy's love story. I had Daisy's love story there because of what I've just explained. Actually, my focus was Marigold and Dennis, and I could have really just written about them very happily.
And why did you choose Alzheimer's, and why did you also, because you're not normally, your books are set either abroad or historical, the Deverells, so historical fiction. The idea that this is a contemporary novel set in the UK, which is very unusual for you.
Yeah, I know. That was because I needed something different. I just done the Deverells. I did Temptation of Gracie, which was Italy. I think I just needed a change. Also, there's something really refreshing about doing something, A, that's contemporary, B, in your own country. You don't need to research it. The Deverells, the War of Independence and all of that, there was a lot of research involved in that book. It was, went off to the mafia in New York in the sort of 30s. So there was no research with regards to the place. The only research was about the disease itself, which once I started burrowing was really fascinating. And of course, it's so widespread, so many people have it. Actually, the idea really came, and to be in a nutshell, because I could talk about this for a long time, there's a book I read my children called Stone Soup when they were little. And it's basically about three monks going to a village, a walled town that's been ravaged by war and famine, and nobody talks to each other. And they say they're going to make stone soup. And in the end, everybody starts coming out to help to make this stone soup, that obviously they're all poor. They'd love to know how to make stone soup. And they all end up helping. And at the end, they have a huge festival with this wonderful soup because they've all brought vegetables. And so I wanted a stone to be the catalyst for everybody in the community to come together. So all the petty feuds and little fights and animosities in the village all get resolved because they're all focusing on the stone, which is Marigold. And they are all learning through Marigold's descent into dementia that life is, all these petty feuds, life is too important to waste on this, that love is important, friendship, giving. And so she teaches them all a really valuable lesson about life and makes them all better people. So I just loved that book, and I always thought, how can I use this? And there's a sort of allegory in my own writing. And anyway, so that then Dementia was an obvious one. And it's heartbreaking. I mean, one of the other films that I absolutely adored was The Notebook, of course. I think many people loved The Notebook. And I was always rather miffed when I watched that, because I thought, that's so me. I should have written that. And so when it came to writing this book, and I thought, oh yeah, Dementia, it's so sad, and you can really get into all the emotions and the love and the loss, and it just gave me so much to write about.
But it is brilliant because you also have at the heart of it the idea of it takes a village to raise a child, but it takes a village to raise a woman in a way, and that's who she is. Marigold is the heart and soul of that village.
Yes.
It's a very lovely book. I mean, I mean, do you write, you've written 22 books, I think.
I've written one a year since, yes, since 2001. So this one is my 20th. The 21st for next year is written already. And I wrote a comedy over lockdown. So that's coming out for Mother's Day in hardback next March.
You're a
So
genius.
yes, it sounds a lot, yeah, it sounds a lot one a year, but actually it takes me 6 months to write a book. So I'm not writing huge history books. You know, your book on the witches of St. Petersburg, that must have taken an enormous amount of research because it's Russia, it's during the age of the Tsars and Rasputin and all of that. So it's not like that. My books don't require that sort of level of research. I can
That's
pretty
not
much.
true, Santa, because you just spent ages telling me all about how you researched Alzheimer's
It doesn't
for.
take that long, though. It doesn't take that long, you know. But
But you're
yes,
very industrious, is what I'm trying to say. And
yeah.
you also have a series of children's books called The Royal Rabbits of
Royal
London.
Rabbits. Yes, the Royal Rabbits of London, which we did 4. And actually, they're harder work than writing my adult novels. If I had the choice, I would write an adult novel rather than the rabbits. I loved writing them and they were really, really fun. But I think because when you're writing for children, so much of it has to be right and you have much less freedom because of their age. You've got to be so sensitive to so many different things that it's actually, you're more restricted when you're writing about children. So actually for me, I'd rather write an adult book. But anyway, we wrote 4 and Fox, 20th Century Fox have bought the rights and are hopefully going to make it into a movie. But right now with COVID, it's slightly all, I think it's in, like a holding pattern. So we'll see.
But you wrote The Rabbits with your husband,
Yes.
Simon Sebag Montefiore.
Yes. Yes.
And what's that like, working in a partnership with a husband? Is it easy or?
I think what was easy about it, because yes, it was surprisingly easy. I think what was easy about it was that neither of us are successful children's authors. So if I had wanted to help him write a history book, it would have been very hard for him to take any of my suggestions, and likewise the other way if he was writing the sort of fiction I write with me. But because it was new territory for both of us, we were really open to each other's suggestions and very happy to sort of collaborate. Neither of us was the authority on the subject, and actually we worked really well because I was very good at all the sort of the emotional, a lot of the emotional stuff. Sebag was very good at all the plotting and the evil ratsies, and also he has a very quirky mind. Just to give you an example, when we invented the ratsies, who are these great big giant super rats who are the enemies with their cameras, they're sort of like, they're paparazzi, Papa being the king of the ratsy mob of rats. I wanted to put them under the Bank of England in sort of like sewers. Well, that's quite cliche actually. Rats always are under buildings and sewers. And he put them at the top of the Shard in this gleaming office, because of course they're media. So they have this gleaming office with everything is pristine in the highest technology of computers and all this sort of stuff, and a gym, an amazing gleaming gym, which actually is the torture chamber because they're all fat and unfit. So any rat that misbehaves has to go to the gym for torture. But he was very quirky and slightly, he's unusual in his imagination. So I think we were really good together, and I think the books are really fun, and a lot of children have written us really sweet. That's the other thing, you get really, really sweet letters from children and pictures and things like that. So it's very rewarding. I have loved it.
And what is your process then on a daily basis? Are you one of those, are you a cafe writer? Are you one of those people who goes to the Starbucks and sits there all day? Or do you actually sit in your beautiful office, which I can see behind?
I sit in my office here, and then I got a Labrador and he didn't want to come upstairs. In fact, he's actually scratching at the door right now. He wouldn't come upstairs. So I had to work in the kitchen downstairs, which is really complicated because our daughter is at university, but she was coming home a lot, and trying to write with people coming in and out of the kitchen and everything is really distracting. So I much prefer to sit up here, light my scented candles, have my music on, and just write for 4 hours without interruption. But when I was in the country, couple of Christmases ago and writing The Temptation of Gracie, I found it hard with the children and all of that. And my son had to have tuition in the nearby village. So I drove him in, and instead of driving home again, I sat in a lovely little cafe and had my coffee. And I'd never done that before. And I could totally understand why people do that. I put my headphones on, I listened to my music, and I wrote, and I was in another place for sort of 2-3 hours without interruption, because of course you don't get disturbed in a cafe. And there aren't the temptations. You can't get up and go to the fridge or call someone or let the dog in or whatever. I actually rather liked writing in a cafe.
So but you are full-time, 9 to 5, if possible, when children aren't there.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, I'll do my gym and everything in the morning. I'll probably get to my desk at around 10 or even 11 o'clock. I've realized I can't have lunch with people if I'm going to have a successful day at my desk. I'm sure you know what that's like. If you have a lunch, then I have to start putting on my mascara at 12 o'clock. And by the time I get back, it's sort of 3:30. Well, the day's gone. So if I, manage to be disciplined enough to say no to girlfriends who say, do you want to come over and have lunch, then from 11 till 6 is perfect. And it's wonderful when you get a day like that, the joy, and you can get so much written. But of course life encroaches, and then you get somebody who's saying, I'm over from Buenos Aires and I'm only here for the day. Can I see you? Well, you can't say no, sorry, you're interrupting my writing day. So I find it really hard. That's my biggest, I don't get writer's block, but I do find it very hard to say no to things and to stick to my desk. That's my biggest challenge.
And so you've already written the one for next year.
Yes.
And you've written
It's not edited. I mean, my editor hasn't read it yet. I hope she likes it. It's a little more off the wall than my other books, so a bit nervous about it. It's the final Deverell novel. So that comes out next year. And then the comedy, which is the character from The Temptation of Gracie called Flappy. And that it's actually going to be called The Thing About Flappy. And that comes out in March.
How exciting. Congratulations.
I loved writing the comedy. Funnily enough, I want to do a series. I want to do one a year, because I had more pleasure writing that book, I think, than I've had in any book I've written. Because it's a comedy and it's funny, you can be outrageous. There was no sort of sobbing, and because one does get very caught up in the emotions of the book, and there are emotional parts in the book, but actually it's just funny from beginning to end, and you can just let rip. I loved that lack of thing. I didn't have to think, oh, if I say her heart throbbed, that's a terrible cliche. Well, wonderful. In this comedy, I can say whatever I want. It can be a huge cliche. It's just funny.
Well, congratulations, Santa. I can't believe it. We have one last look at Here and Now?
There it is. There is Here and Now.
Before.
I do have a copy of The Secret Hours in paperback, which is here. So there they are together.
Massive congratulations. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Well, don't be silly. Thank you for having me on the Great Big Book Club, and congratulations also to the Great Big Book Club, because it's fabulous and it's just exciting to have such a wonderful platform to listen and read about all my favorite authors. So I'm very excited to be part of it. Thank you.